A very warm welcome. This session is called Policy into Action, Innovative Adaptation for Climate Resilient Development. And it's organized by a team of friends and partners. The group here includes BRAC, the Bangladesh NGOs Network for Radio and Communications, and CBF. Could you raise your hand if you're with BRAC? Yeah, great. Thank you. And the state of Palestine, we have at least one member from the state of Palestine that's here. The International Water Management Institute, or IMI, and we have at least one person from IMI here. Okay. And then I'm with AGWA, Alliance for Global Water Adaptation, and there are two members over here and another one running around over there in the corner. But why are we here? What's brought us to this session? And this idea about innovation in climate resilient development. The issue that really unites all of these groups together is an insight that water is really key in how we think about development. And water has been present as a climate issue from the beginning of negotiations, even before the UNFCCC itself was founded. But it's really evolved over time, and we've thought about it as a set of hazards. Floods and droughts must be the most common phrase that I hear, actually, in negotiations or in public speeches. But there are many aspects in which water can be a hazard and a danger for us. It can be the instrument through which we feel climate impacts. But water is also a sector, and the UNFCCC historically has talked about water as a sector, as a sector that's on par with, say, forests or for cities, for other kinds of units of organization. That reached a kind of new level around 2016 with the Marrakesh COP, when we saw the first Water Day happen, and I felt very honored to participate in that Water Day in Marrakesh. But what I think we've seen happen, especially over the last 2 or 3 COPs, is water has risen as an issue. And it's risen really is not just something that we need to adapt to, not just as a risk, but it's actually really critical to how we think about resilience itself. I've really come to think about water as the medium for resilience. And if you have been tracking say the GGA, the Global Goal on Adaptation, water is appearing at least 3 times in the most recent draft that I saw. That's remarkable. It's moved from something that's on the side, something that's in sessions that people are talking about in rooms, that they're worried about in their projects, to a kind of strategic issue. And that's what we're going to hear today. We're going to hear and see examples. And what we'd also like to do is really invite you as the audience to engage and respond on those issues, to bring your knowledge as well. Because we think that really the future of the COP, especially around issues around climate adaptation, resilience, loss and damage, even many aspects of climate mitigation, they're really water resilience issues. And I hope that this can be, as an event, something that helps us walk down that path to begin with. So we're still hoping, inshallah, for our keynote speaker, who's a member of the UNFCCC Secretariat. But what I'd like to do to begin with, actually, is go right into the country case studies. And I would like to invite Dr. Ghulam Rabbani to the panel, please. And Dr. Ghulam Rabbani is the head of the Climate Bridge Fund Secretariat at BRAC. He's from Bangladesh. He was previously at the Bangladesh Center for Advanced Studies as a fellow and has been engaged in carrying out diversified projects in the field of environment, climate change adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk management throughout his career. And I'll just add that my experience is, my first COP was Copenhagen, 2009. That Bangladesh was at the front of thinking about water as a strategic asset at all levels, from the negotiators down to civil society. So we're very honored to have you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. I think I have a PowerPoint presentation. Is it ready?
There we go.
Okay. Let me introduce myself, at the beginning. My name is Ghulam Rabbani. I work for BRAC, and BRAC is the world's largest global South-led NGO. We have been working in 17 countries in the world, especially in Africa and Asia. And we have reached around 100 million of people in 17 countries, including Bangladesh. So, BRAC is also very well known as a solutions, designer, solutions implementer, demonstrator, and very unique executor across the world, including Bangladesh. So just to tell you, on the brief about the background of this Climate Bridge Fund that I'm leading in Bangladesh. BRAC has been, experiencing its, climate change, development, and disaster-related issues across the country because BRAC has existence in almost every corner in the country. So since early 20s to even 2010 to 2015, BRAC observed that there is a migration pattern in the whole country. And this migration pattern was influenced by the climatic hazards. So they started thinking about how BRAC can address the problems of the climate migrants in urban cities, where is the destination, in different cities and towns in the country. So they initiated discussion with the German government, and they established the Climate Bridge Fund in 2019 to address the problems of climate migrants in 5 selected destinations, urban destinations in the country. So since 2020, we started this Climate Bridge Fund, and the main objective of this fund is to support the local NGOs and the national NGOs to implement adaptation projects in these 5 areas, so that we can at least address the current problems, and the NGOs in future can deal with the intensified climatic hazards in future. So if you look at the finance mechanism, the Climate Bridge Fund, which was supported by the government of Germany through KfW, and we are actually supporting the projects which are covering different areas of interventions. That includes basic services, education, infrastructure, health, housing, livelihood. But one of the common sector of intervention that we see is the wash. So if you look at every slums and informal settlements in the towns and the cities in Bangladesh, wash is one of the major problems where everyone suffers, from the children, the woman, the man, the elderly population, everyone. So, and there are number of models and the options, solutions that we have seen, that BRAC, different programs of BRAC and the other local NGOs are implementing. As I was saying, that the solutions are actually, from some of the programs of BRAC and some of the, solutions from non-BRAC NGOs. So if you look at this one, this is model 1 that was implemented by, disaster risk management program in association with ultra poor graduation, program of BRAC. If you look at this technology, you can see that there are, 2 tanks. Each of the tank has capacity of 3,000 liters. So we install the submersible pump, and in most of the cases, the submersible pumps in many urban cities are basically operated either with the national grid, support, electricity support, or with the diesel. But UPGP and Disaster Risk Management Program has thought it alternatively, how we can use the solar power system to operate this. And this has been, you can see on the left of this image, that solar power system is operating the submersible pump to extract the water every day to support 1,200 houses. And interestingly, as you can see, that the second principle of adaptation is to maximize the benefit, co-benefit, when you implement an adaptation actions. So to add with that, one of the tank on the right side is connected with the rainwater harvesting system. And we have the rainy season, that we can harvest during June, July, August, and September. So this is how the technology works. We added, at least 3 options to ensure both mitigation and adaptation options under this model, and very successful model. Why I'm saying this? Because the mayor of this Khulna City Corporation and his officers, all officers, told us that this is the model that the other NGOs, even the government system, will follow to provide the water supply in this city corporation area. So that's the model that we are following. The second model that I would like to talk about is the mini pipe networked water point. This is again interesting, model, because, like many other cities in the world, you need to have a household number to get access to water supply, to other development, support access. But, in this informal settlements and the slum areas, very challenging. So BRAC started discussion with the city corporation and their officers. And they have this WASA, Water Supply Authority. So they discuss with this water supply authority so that we can have an extended network of this, water supply, then support this water to the, slum people, informal settlements. So that's what we did. We took the water, with a motor-supported, over a tank, and from this tank we supply the water to the informal settlements. And there are different options. It's not like only one option. There are a number of options across the slum areas. So this is working really well. And this has been managed by the community itself. They have the users community, they have the operation and maintenance committee, and they look after it very well. So that's how our monitoring systems talks about. And this is being implemented by the Urban Development Program of BRAC, which is another development, the program of BRAC. If you look at the third model, BRAC also thought about that it's not only that BRAC will implement all the programs, across the country. They thought about the localization principles in the entire country. So they wanted to promote the other local NGOs to work with that. So CVF, through CVF mechanism, we are supporting other NGOs. For example, this Village Education Resource Center, which is supported by WaterAid Bangladesh. And this is a model where, in the drought-prone area, many children, the school-going children, girls, this is a girls' school I'm talking about. So, they cannot come to the school during the pre-monsoon period because the temperature goes more than 40 degrees centigrade. So many of the children, many of the school girls do not come to the schools because water supply sanitation system was not adequate and very nice. So what WaterAid Bangladesh and this local organization VARC did is they have established a wash block, 10-chambered wash block, that is supporting this school-going children, and they are using it very nicely all around the year. That's the resilience that we wanted to bring at the community level. Let me talk about the last model. This is another model that is being implemented by another local organization, which is DSK. So this is again like what the second model was. This is extended water network line with purification system. So because many of the households, many people actually do not rely on the water supply system, the quality of water. So they thought like, if we just add a small device that will purify the water, ensure the the quality of water, the safe water to the network, so that ensures their productivity and the quality of water for children, women, and men, all other member of the households. And this is being implemented by DSK. I will just finish with sharing some of the lessons. There are 4 lessons. Let me just talk about 2 lessons within the time. The first thing is we really need to differentiate the development projects and the climate change projects. The development projects, disaster management projects are technically different from the adaptation projects. If you do not integrate the climate projection, you are not actually having the adaptation projects. That's the difference that we have to make it. And BRAC is following that, which was referred by the IPCC's 6th assessment report, is adaptive social protection, where we promote humanitarian services, development intervention, and also adaptation actions. Those 3 concepts together, we make it adaptive social protection, under our practices. Identifying co-benefits of activities at the project design. As I was talking about when I shared the model 1, is when you design an adaptation projects, you make sure that you have few more options, like the rainwater harvesting system that I was talking about. So you need to have more options to ensure the co-benefits of it. So that's the second thing. And of course, in terms of localization, you need to really discuss, consult with the local authorities, local communities before you design any projects. That's what we actually promote through the CVF mechanism under BRAC umbrella. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gowam. A very powerful, differentiated example about being able to show especially urban water supply and sanitation systems for a variety of different applications. And I appreciate your emphasis on distinguishing between traditional development and the need for this climate narrative, this sense that we're doing something that actually is specifically meant to help with climate impacts in that role. Well, that's a great point. I hope we can come back to it in the questions.
Sure.
Because it would be nice to hear some more detail
Absolutely.
there. I'd like to now turn to the state of Palestine. And I'm going to, we have a speaker that will be attending online, but we also have a speaker here online. We're joined by Madam Majeda Alana. And here in person, we have Mr. Ahmad Abu Taher. Please come to the podium, Mr. Abu Taher. Madam Alana is the General Director for Water Resources and the Control Directorate at the Palestinian Water Resources Agency. And Mr. Abu Taher is Director General for Projects and International Relations at the Environment Quality Authority and the UNFCCC National Focal Point. And I would just really like to add that we're very grateful for both of you in a time of war being here. So we hope that your family is well. I would like to start off with a question to you, Mr. Abu Taher, before we turn to the presentation. What does COP28 represent to you this year? And what are the key things that we should understand about the intersection of climate and security in Palestine today?
Thank you very much. First of all, we come here despite the terrible situation in Palestine, in both in Gaza and West Bank and in Jerusalem, with the Israeli occupation and his settlers who demolishing our land, cutting our trees, killing our people in Gaza. But we do our best in order to see the international community that even in our worst situation, we are doing our role in helping the globe for combating climate change. In terms of climate security and water resources, I think our natural resources are unfortunately under the control of the Israeli people. 80% of our groundwater is controlled by the Israelis. They leave for us only 70 liters per capita per day, and the settlers use more than 300 liters per capita per day. This is one. The second also, we face other logistical problems. For example, if we want to look for non-conventional water, for example, the wastewater treatment plant and reuse. According to the Oslo Agreement, all those activities should take environmental approval from the Israeli side. And if you want to construct a wastewater treatment plant for a community, it takes more than 10 years to have the approval. So imagine the period. And even though we have some treatment plants in West Bank, only in major cities, even a city like Hebron, which contain more than 100,000 population, recently their treatment plant is under construction. In our rural areas, there is no way for wastewater treatment plants. The same also for our situation in water. I'm in a village, I receive water only 24 hours per week. In other areas, they receive it 24 hours per 2 weeks. So imagine these quantities with high temperature due to the climate change. And also we experience intensive raining. So previously we have a real distribution for the rainfall, but nowadays, since 3 years, we experience intensive raining, which cause floods in other areas. And there is no way to take time to infiltrate to the ground aquifer. In terms of Gaza, it's a very terrible situation. The coastal aquifer is before the war with a very bad quality. Only 3 to 5% of the coastal aquifer is considered as potable water. And it fades from soil intrusion. But in any case, we have some different models. For example, every house in Palestine had a solar water heater on the rooftop, because also the electricity is very expensive in our area. The kilowatt hour around 22 cents USD. So it's very expensive. We use the solar in order to heat our water for the whole, most of the year. We use it. Despite that, we develop, we as the state of Palestine, we are getting party for the UNFCCC since 2015. We developed our national determined contribution report in 2017, and we updated in 2021. Two major things in this NDC, the water management and agriculture. There are two main pillars that we have to work on. For water, we have to work for conservation, the water, our water resources. Also, we have to increase the percentage of treated wastewater and reuse. In agriculture, we concentrate on climate-smart agriculture. So, in terms of security, we have a special case, the occupation and the climate. And also the problem also was exaggerating in Gaza, that our people in Gaza, they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have even health facilities. What is available for our people in Gaza, only 17 liters per capita per day for everything. In terms of climate also, if you look to the other side of the problem, that the Israeli troops, the Israeli aircrafts also use fossil fuel, which also emit CO2 greenhouse gases, which affect our health, and also it will affect maybe the neighbors, because the Mediterranean Sea is not only for Palestine. I mean, here go for the marine environment. Most of the European countries are surrounded in the Mediterranean Sea. So imagine how the situation for the people with those two contradictions, the climate change and the occupation. And thank you very much.
We'll now turn to the speaker that's joining us remotely, Madam Majeda. Can we see her and her slides, please? Okay, great. Thank you. It's a team effort.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Well, thank you for having this opportunity to be here today with you. I hear an echo, is that okay?
We don't hear one here. I would just go ahead and continue, and we'll sort it out on this end.
Do you hear me as well?
We can hear you very well, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm here today to present about something that we already implemented in Palestine. Thank you, Ahmed, for the introduction and the overview of the water situation in Palestine. And because of these different situations, we started to look for the water tracker here. And I would like to highlight that in Palestine, we depend on groundwater as the main source of the water. And we have a shared aquifer with the Israelis in the West Bank and one of the coastal aquifer, which is in Gaza Strip. And Palestine is considered as the most stressed water countries in the world and in the MENA region, with an increase of the population and increase the demand. And we have only the limited amount of water quantity since 1995, which is Oslo Agreement that determined how much we can, abstract from the groundwater. So increasing the number of drought is expected and become more frequent. We realize this in the country with low and high rainfall events, and they are very concentrated. We have increase of floods in their intensity and increase in their occurrence. So we have like flash floods, they coming 2 to 3 times a year, and they are concentrated like in areas like in Jericho area and also in Gaza Strip. Water and the agriculture sectors, they are likely be the most vulnerable to the climate change impact. The lack of quantitative data relevant to the climate change and its implication is very obviously found in the country. We also have lack of infrastructure for the water harvesting. We have a plan for the rainwater harvesting, but unfortunately we need to implement it in Area C, and Area C is controlled by the Israeli, and we need to get some permitting to implement these infrastructure, as well as for the reuse of the wastewater as an alternative source for the water there. Water infrastructure is deteriorated and subjected to confiscation and also to demolished by the Israeli. Financial constraints most of the infrastructure for the strategic interventions as the wastewater treatment plant, desalination treatment plant in Gaza, they depend on donors and they are subjected to licensing from the Israelis. As Ahmed said, that we already, as Palestinian, we submitted our national, communication report to the UNFCCC in 2016, and after that we developed the NAB according to the UNFCCC also in 2019, and we become, the 60 party to submit the NAB to the to submit the NAB. And also Palestinian Climate Action Planning prepared for the National Determination Contribution, which is the NDCs. We prepare that, as well as we, from that, we develop implementation plan and action plan for the water, agriculture, health, energy, and transport. And the NDCs, they are implemented for water. Why we try to use the water tracker? Because we have like high-level support from the ministries, let's say from our minister in the Palestinian Water Authority, from the EQA minister. So we have to, we get the support and we are getting the implementation. And we have a team who is working on that from different stakeholders, like the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, Environmental Quality Authority. We have some support from academia, and plus the Palestinian Water Authority. So it is a group work and it is a teamwork, and also coordination and support from the Global Water Leadership Program and the JWB and other, organization working in the same, like the Water Tracker and IWM or AGWA. And we are looking forward for a wider stakeholder engagement and capacity building to support the policy revision. How we apply, when we are applying the Water Tracker, we were looking for the objectives to achieve from that, promoting a shared vision and understanding of the water resilience across the sectors and institutional policies and frameworks, provide clarity in evaluating the ambient and efficient national climate, and supporting the value of chain from water-sensitive investment, the line ministries, agencies, NGOs, donors, financial institutions, all of them, and then promote tools and frameworks to enable the water-sensitive mitigation and adaptation project. For those who are not familiar with the Water Tracker, it is, it's a tool integrated in 3 phases. First, we apply a Water Tracker questionnaire. The first questionnaire is about the water in national climate plans. The other one is water in national planning and governance. The third one is the water and the climate connection in specific actors. The fourth one, linkage to climate finance and the project implementation. And then the second phase is identifying syringes gaps in the planning. The third phase, which was according the priorities and addressing the gaps. So in this kind of work, we have some documents that we revised. We revised the national development plans that we have in the water sector, environmental and agricultural sector mainly, as well as the energy sector. The first, the NDCs, the NAPs, the National Policy Agenda, the agricultural water sector, and also we revised the NDC implementation plan for the water, which deals with the water treatment and conservation, improving water network infrastructure, and also improving water resources infrastructure. The challenges that we are facing in implementing, or in the water sector, as Ahmed he said some of these challenges about the restriction and access and control over the natural resources, including land, water, and also the permitting of infrastructure, especially in Area C. And the water sector is already under severe pressure due to the political situation. We have a financial constraint because most of the financial here in the country depend on the external door and the donor agenda. The large number of the service provider we have in the country make it very difficult sometimes to manage the sector, and we are purchasing like 60% of the water from the Israeli company Makarot. Also, we have a shortage in the infrastructure for the water harvesting and for the wastewater treatment and the reuse. So from the initial results that we find from this water tracker, in terms of the implementation of the NDCs, we find that the NDCs, they include implementation plan for the water sector, which is good. Existing institutional framework and the water governance is there. And this is, considered as a key strength factors for the plans. The NDCs is in line with other relevant documents, including integrated water resource management and disaster risk management, as well as the international obligations. We also find that cross-sectorial key stakeholder work collaborative to develop the climate adaptation and mitigation goals, as well as in the capacity development need for the Palestinian Authority institution regarding climate adaptation and mitigation measures. They were identified, and the climate actions were in line with the annual budget for some sectors like EQF. So in terms of the finding, in terms of the water national climate plans, they are generally climate impact related to hydrological cycles, and the priorities and risk, they are not included. and the water risk are covered in some documents. The water is mentioned as a sector document, and while the WASH is not highlighted, the WASH is not highlighted as well as the SDGs is not mentioned, and we get it into consideration this time in our, strategic planning. And then we find that water is considered a requirement to achieve the adaptation goals, and no water required for the mitigation was mentioned. In terms of institutional framework and the water governance, there are no explicit institutional mechanism and structure that facilitate government and stakeholder, and the need to establish a regulatory framework. We have EQA, they are leading the process, but no regulatory framework for that. The vulnerable communities, they are not involved in the process of the development of the NAB, let's say the most, women, youth, disabilities, they should be involved more in the development of this. Capacity building needs for the climate risk and uncertainty, but then downscaling of international climate change adaptation, they were implemented and installed like the early warning system we implemented in some of the areas. In terms of climate connections to specific sectors, we have increasing water availability is covered in all documents, but no clear process for assessing the availability to meet the goals. Also, adaptation actions and activities, they are covered under climate change scenarios for specific sector, like agriculture and water. Adaptation of interventions, they are mostly included in the perspective, included in the productivity and irrigation. Reuse of treated wastewater and harvesting is there, and this is implementation action plan have been developed. We already mentioned about them. In terms of climate finance, we find that adaptation action with ranks and scoring for estimate cost of the project and policies, they were highlighted. Need of enabling environment, as well as the need for establishment of climate financing framework is very much needed, and the co-financing mechanism should be considered in the coming years. Well, as a key lessons learned, under the recommendation, we have building on the best practice examples in Palestine. The BWA committed itself to enhance the water resilience and climate planning through the following, which is considering the climate change in the water sector, updating strategies and policies already in process. BWA consider the renewable energy in all infrastructure and reuse projects, and support the development of enabling environment for the public-private partnership. Also, we are keening for the reduce of the carbon emission, this is more or less to the treating of the wastewater and the sludge. And we have one example in Nablus West. We are applying the water tracker for the use of the results in order to mainstream climate change adaptation in the water sector. I want to highlight one project that I really like very much when I go to Gaza. It's about the North Gaza sewage treatment project. And this project actually is a green climate fund project. I hope that it will still, running. We have no information about it, how it is going. The project used to serve 350,000 persons in the Gaza Strip, and it was, funded by the World Bank, EU, AFD, the Swedish, and the Belgium. And it aims to provide potential environmental risk through treating the wastewater and infiltration basin, and also recovery well for the use of the agriculture. Next, please. And the final thing that is the project consists of three main components. The first one is the production of additional quantities for the agricultural use by applying additional water resources, creating 7 infiltration basins for the recharge to the aquifer. And we have a recovery wells, which is 14 wells and 1 reservoir. And we have a water nexus development for the renewable low emission energy. So this one. as well as the second component is the development of irrigation, water efficiency, and the climate resilience. And this is improving the services for the irrigation. It was for 4,200 people beneficiary, and now it's with 5,000 beneficiary around that. And, serving 1,500 hectares. And then the other thing is increasing the climate resilience for agriculture, adaptation of a cropping system. The third component is the management of the water cycle in the context of climate change and capacity building. And there is a role of controlling the water, reuse, the controlling the quality, and also the exit strategy for operation and maintenance, and also, building the water user association and increase their capacity on how to deal with the water reuse. Unfortunately, this project, I hope that it will be, continued, and it will serve the people as much as possible, because due to the current assaults, we don't know the situation right now, how it is performing or how it is operating. And thank you.
We're very grateful for that, Madam Alana, and we hope that you and your family are well. And we're really grateful for you joining from a conflict zone. A very powerful story in terms of thinking about these challenges on climate adaptation, but an interesting example too of how to integrate across a variety of sectors. This final project, for instance, looking at sewage treatment, but also irrigation and fertilizer treatment for a mixed urban-rural population in the management of both subsurface and surface water resources. What I heard there was really the Palestinian Water Authority is becoming the instrument of adaptation, fully integrated as a prime mover within Palestine's NDC. A very interesting example. We'll move now from South Asia, where we had a great example of locally led adaptation in urban wash issues for urban resilience, coordinated with the NDC, to the Levant, to Palestine, and now we'll move to Central America. I'm very honored to be able to introduce Madam Priscilla Riquelme. She is the Adaptation Resilience Analyst of the Climate Change Directorate of the Ministry of Environment of Panama. She has a degree in environmental engineering from the Technological University of Panama with a deep knowledge and experience in climate change. The floor is yours, Senora.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank you for the invitation and the space to talk about what Panama has been working on. First, okay. Yes. First, I want to tell that Panama is a highly vulnerable country to climate change. Some of the most relevant impacts is that the changes in precipitation patterns that modifies the availability of water in our country, and specifically more in different economic activities. So, as a result of this vulnerability, Panama has developed different strategies and tools, such as the first update of our NDCs, where we prioritize the integrated watershed management as one of the sectors. And one of the commitments we have is that by 2025, we will develop our climate change plan on integrated watershed management, and which will contain adaptation and mitigation components. Also, in 2021, we developed we present our executive degree 135 about adaptation of climate change in Panama, where we created different programs and projects around adaptation of climate change in Panama. And one of these is the National Reduce Your Water Footprint program, which we aim to manage the water footprint at the different levels, in corporates, products, and also municipal. And right now, we have 60 organizations participating in the corporate component. Sorry. Also, about products and municipalities, right now it's under construction. So we are looking forward to work with municipalities and also with our farmers. Later, we started technical cooperation with Agua, where we started implementing the water tracker tool. And right now, it has been applied to 6 national documents, and we have different results and recommendations about this implementation. Some key points is that we don't recognize the water as a sector, but we have, like I mentioned, the integrated watershed management as one of the sectors that are prioritizing our NDCs. So we see water resource as cross-cutting with other sectors, such as agriculture, health, and some other. And also we recognize that we need to build capacities at the national and local level, essentially or especially because of the uncertainty about climate risk. Finally, it's also important that right now we have the recommendation and the results of the implementation of the water tracker tool. So right now we need a lot of support and different cooperates with other entities, because we need to update and change and modify these documents and different policies that we have right now. Also, we will keep implementing the water tracker tool in another phase with other documents. So we have a lot of homework to keep doing and implementing and updating our documents, national documents, and also our activities, actions, and some other more. Thank you.
Also, a very interesting example. In here, we see, I think, a really good example of how it's a climate change ministry, right? It's not a water ministry, it's not a water authority, but viewing water as a strategic asset. And I loved how you talked about it. It's not the water sector, it's this thematic component, trying to connect all of these different sectors. That's almost poetic in how you're trying to approach it. I think that's really powerful. I also appreciated the kind of open-endedness, this unfolding that you needed to pursue there. Are there some kind of key points you wanted to make?
No, everything.
Okay.
Mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And you've heard now a couple of references to something called the Water Tracker. That's a program that Agua started about 2.5 years ago. It's led by Kelsey Harpham in the corner, raising her hand. Watertracker.cc is where you can look at it. And it's a kind of detailed questionnaire that was described before. You can actually get a copy of it and look at it yourself. What we do is we engage with the countries, and they set the priorities. They say, here's what we're trying to do in our NDC or our NAP, and how do we see where maybe water is actually hidden inside of some of these commitments? And how do we look for synergies? Where do we look where maybe we've actually planted potential conflicts or risks for ourselves that we weren't aware of? And how do we resolve that and overall increase the coherence and efficacy of our NDC? Can you, Madam Meneses, can you tell us a little more about the policy frameworks in Panama that are supporting the implementation of climate adaptation? What you think maybe others could learn from the process? So please, yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Mainly, well, in Panama, I didn't mention, but we have a lot of water resources. So when you have a lot of resources in your country, or normally when you have a lot of resources, you don't have to worry about what you have, no? But looking at the impacts, and also Panama have developed the climate change scenarios about the changes in precipitation patterns, and looking at the impacts and what we will see at 2030, 2050, and 70, we need to prepare. Because right now we are facing some impacts, but later it will be worse. So we have started capacity building at different levels. We started with institutions, also with local organizations, the communities, farmers, also the bank sector, and also our Ministry of Finance. So we have been working on building capacities about what Panama is going to face in the future, and the need of implementing different actions about adaptation of climate change and water resources, especially because our economic activities develop around using water, so we need it. Also, we develop our legal basis about adaptation, as I mentioned, the executive degree 135 about adaptation, where we created different programs, projects, tools, instruments about climate change, such as climate change scenarios. We have the scenarios for sea level rise, for changes in precipitation patterns, and also about the increase of temperature. So this has allowed us to develop different activities and projects around adaptation of climate change. Also, we are right now developing our climate change plans in the different prioritized sectors, and also the integrated watershed management. So we have been working on all these activities, but also we need to improve a lot. So we are doing a lot of approach to entities, also Agua also approached us. We did a lot of cooperate works. So we have been doing all this so we can improve and also build a more resilient country.
Fantastic. A final round of hands for our case studies. I'd like if our case study speakers could stay up, and I'd like to invite the panelists to be able to come and sit with us as well. First, I'll introduce Mr. Barish Chaudhry. He's the Policy and Campaigns Coordinator for the Bangladesh Environmental Lawyers Association and works on renewable energy, climate change, and human rights. Dieter Rotenberger is the head of GIZ's sector program, Water Policy Innovations for Resilience, and he advises BMZ, the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, on new and upcoming trends in the water sector, particularly on linkages between water and climate. And Mr. James John Dikoko. Is that right? Dikoko. All right. Thank you. He's a fourth-generation farmer in the Philippines and the marketing and logistics head of his family's rural bank. He also works on startups with a recent project dedicated to providing solar photovoltaic systems integrated into livelihoods, including agricultural rural communities, to provide economic and environmental benefits. We're really glad to have the three of you. What I'll do is I'll go to each one of you in turn. I'll ask a question, and if maybe you could keep it to around 5 minutes, then we'll have time to be able to invite questions from the audience as well. And then we'll be able to also hopefully have questions for our case studies too. So I'm going to start with Mr. Chaudhry. And I'd like to ask you, how do you see that climate change has been mainstreamed into water sector policy in Bangladesh? And how does it interact with climate policy and climate action?
Thank you so much for the invitation. just want to preface this. I'm not a technical expert, but I have learned so much just from these presentations. What I am is I work on policy matters and on environmental issues. I think just to set the scene very quickly, Bangladesh is, as everyone knows, one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. It's one of the countries where you can taste climate impacts, and it tastes like salt. Saltwater intrusion is rampant in the coastal areas of Bangladesh and requires very urgent adaptation needs. In many places along the mangrove forests of the Sundarbans, women have to walk for hours every single day to get fresh water. Women in those areas also consume 20 times the World Health Organization limit of salt because it's coming from the water. In general, I think we have a lot of very important plans that that our government has put forward, including the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, the Delta Plan 2100, and now most recently our National Adaptation Plan. But what we've seen so far is that there has been a lack of integration with the policies and laws that in the country. I'll give you two very quick examples of that. Our Water Act, which came into law in 2013, talks about embankments to protect from flooding, which still in many parts of the country are yet to become reality. The other one that I want to mention is under the Water Development Board Act, which says that the Water Development Board is empowered to designate wetlands as flood zones and therefore take the necessary adaptive measures to reduce the impacts of flooding. What instead we've seen is that Bangladesh has the highest rate of wetland loss in Asia. And, excuse me, existing resource management laws provide a vision of climate resilient development, but there is often a gap between that vision and the practice within the country. I just mentioned the wetland loss. I think the other sort of big thing is that we are very reliant on groundwater. We are a nation of rivers. There are more than 700, by some counts, 1,200 rivers that flow through the Bengal Delta, but surface water is increasingly scarce in usage because of pollution. One of the best sort of examples that that my organization has been working with is the fact that salinity intrusion being such a grave problem and there being laws in place to structure embankments and protect coastal communities. At the same time, we also have policies supporting commercial shrimp cultivation in coastal areas, which is also leading to aggravated saltwater intrusion. Agriculture is one of the sectors that we are most reliant on and yet is most at risk of climate impacts and water scarcity. In the north part of the country along the Barren Tract, groundwater extraction has been proven unsustainable and in many cases inequitable. In the winter months, during the dry seasons, and increasingly in the summer seasons, where temperatures are now quite regularly hitting the high 30s, early 40s, water is becoming scarce, and this will be multiplied and exacerbated as climate change gets worse and worse. Drought and desertification will increase. Groundwater in urban areas is depleting even more quickly. We've noticed a 2-meter loss in groundwater every single year in the capital of Dhaka. But there are many policies and plans in place to try and counter this, to try and build adaptive capacity. One of them has been rainwater collection. Our colleague from BRAC highlighted several measures that they've taken to promote this. But often this is not systemic. This is being done through locally led adaptation, but in small scale. And these models need to be promoted at a national scale. The second thing is I think we really have to come to terms with the fact that water is a crisis now. It's a national crisis. Groundwater depletion especially, which we rely so heavily on, is a crisis mode. And we have to take that and frame that so that we can build policies and build practices that will be up to the challenge of facing that. Lastly, I want to talk about here at COP. We've been seeing 11 days now of adaptation negotiations move frustratingly and painfully slowly. As we come to the end of COP, I just want to end with the call to action on the global goal on adaptation. This is extremely important for countries like mine to build adaptive capacity because we are already facing these impacts. And these adaptive capacities, whatever gaps in policy and practice that I've highlighted so far, you need the means of implementation if we're going to actually meet the adaptive needs of a country of over 160 million people. And without the means of implementation, we will have frameworks in place that will not be able to be put into action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, an excellent story, starting with the Sundarbans, the barrier islands off the southern coast of Bangladesh. There are hundreds of them, I believe, that are so fragile. They're very low-lying, and saltwater intrusion in the aquifers, and even the surface waters after major storms. And then inland, the large populations of people, the large cities of Bangladesh, so dependent on surface water that itself is of low quality because of probably runoff issues, and then a rapidly depleting, much cleaner groundwater, although I think it has a lot of arsenic in it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there are also water quality issues there.
Salt and arsenic getting into the groundwater.
Yeah, it's tasty water, so it's not just high salt concentrations. So this combination, it looks like Bangladesh has so much water, yet it actually has a profound crisis. And I think a very interesting call to action that we heard from a lawyer who sounds like a technical expert to me, of the combination of local prioritization, national planning at the NDC, but also I think an impassioned statement about the real need and importance and priority of having water in the GGA. So thank you. I'll turn now to the Philippines, and I was so interested in your that you're a fourth-generation farmer. I also grew up on a farm, and I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how your individual and family experience as a farmer you think needs to be represented in this context, and maybe some of the story about why water is so critical to agriculture that often strangely seems to be kind of absent part of the conversation here at COP.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, first of all, I'm so happy to be here, surrounded by everyone here, and I'm so thankful for this opportunity. So aside from being a fourth-generation farmer, I'm also a third-generation banker. So my grandfather also started a small rural bank in my hometown because he saw the need for financing for small farmers. Okay, so we are a family of rice farmers, and we also run a bank. So, and now I'm the first in the family to be really invested in sustainability. So in a way, I can look at climate change. I can look at several issues here being discussed at COP28 with three pairs of eyes. So I can look at it in a producer aspect. I can look at it as a financing aspect, and as in a way in a mitigating aspect. So in terms of farming, actually I've been a victim of climate change for the past, I think, 6 seasons. Back then, typhoons can be predicted to the point that farmers would actually adapt when they plant and when they harvest. But for the past years, it's been increasing in magnitude and increasing in frequency. in 2020 alone, we suffered 3 super typhoons in a span of 30 days. So we didn't even have a chance to recover in between. And that happened just a few weeks before harvest time. So most of the farmers in my region were left with nothing to harvest. In a report, it amounted to almost $22 million just for that small region. So can you imagine if this happens continually and in the future? And right now, if we don't do anything about it, farmers are not going to be the only victims or one of the major victims. When food security is going to be very critical, it's like a ripple effect that affects all of us. Everyone needs to eat. And sadly, rice farming is one of the top emitters of methane. And I've been around talks here and I've been exposed to several technologies such as satellite, soil testing and everything. But as a farmer, when you hear about new technology, you always hear additional cost, additional labor. At the moment, we are already struggling with farming. Most of our smallholder farmers have not even recovered from the past typhoons. And there's also the problem not only of typhoons, but of drought. So water is very, very important to farming. And sadly, in most of our areas in the Philippines, irrigation systems are not a priority in terms of infrastructure. And sadly, most of our farmers are not represented in the negotiations. They're not included in the planning. It's not because of a lack of organization or of aggregation. There are a lot of farmer associations and farming organizations in our country, but the problem is the approach to development is more on a messianic approach. It's like telling our farmers, okay, we want to do this, and you deal with it. There's no conversation in between. There's no collaboration. If there is some, it's a minority of the whole development plan. And sadly, that increases the vulnerability of our farmers. And right now, we're not just climate vulnerable, we are also energy vulnerable. We are suffering from lack of electricity, which also affects lack of access to safe drinking water. That's why when I saw Dr. Rabbani's presentation, it was like a light bulb moment that I want to do that too. So I think that's the point of all this, all of us gathering here, is to be an exchange of ideas, an exchange of technologies. What was mentioned before, I'm not a technical expert also, but I'm really good at making friends who are smarter than me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're really grateful that you're here to tell of these direct experiences. Often we don't hear stories in a COP context, and it's important to hear. These typhoons, hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin, these typhoons in the Philippines, sometimes they come with storm surges of 3, 4, 5 meters in many regions. And they're incredibly powerful. They also affect the Sundarbans, of course, too. We often hear about the massive storms, the direct impacts, but this kind of lingering impact that you're saying, 3 of them at once, super typhoons, wiping out all prospect of any kind of harvest. And I think it's also really interesting, this kind of secondary insight that your grandfather had, that actually agriculture and finance were profoundly linked. That just because the natural agricultural cycle, normal climate, from 50 years ago, 70 years ago, required finance to help level everything out. And now we also have special needs in finance and technology to help with these larger oscillations that maybe farmers are experiencing. So thank you. I'd like now to turn to a friend and colleague, Dieter. Dieter is in your work on water policy at GIZ. I'm curious why come to COP? What is the role that you see of GIZ from water policy into climate policy?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, John, for inviting me to this panel. What is the role of water policy with regard to climate policy? Actually, GIZ, on behalf of the German government, of the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, is basically at the forefront of combining these, well, sometimes people say water sector, and I know, John, that we have this discussion that maybe the water sector is not really a sector, because when people talk about water sector, they think about pumps and pipes, while obviously the water sector is much more, and this is the key point, cross-cutting, and therefore it is linked to numerous other sectors. And this is what we, now in particular my program, as the water policy program, is advising the German government to consider much more in their future programming, how these interlinkages can be made in a way that actually you create synergies, you don't create duplications, or you don't create even, basically conflicts. And so in this regard, and I'm happy to use a quote which has been used quite widely here already at COP, we definitely see water as a resilience multiplier, because if you really tackle water issues in your countries and in your policies, then obviously you're also dealing with issues like food security, with health, agriculture, adaptation and mitigation, risk reduction, and so on. So therefore, the German government has provided in 2022 about 6.4 billion to the climate financing arena for developing countries, and about 86% of that is coming from this ministry we are advising, and about the third largest sector of receiving funds from these climate finance is the water sector. So we definitely see these interlinkages, and we want to play on these interlinkages. And beside the policy work we do with the German government, we also have, as an implementing entity for the German government, numerous programs which actually on the ground help our partners, be it national partners, regional partners, or in various cases also continental partners, to really embrace these linkages between water and the climate arena. And just to mention maybe some very recent initiatives, which one of them has been launched by the EU and our partners from Africa, the African Union, AMCAO, and also Germany, the Team Europe initiative on transboundary water management in Africa, where actually you deal with governance issues, you deal with really the implementation issues on the ground, you deal with investment issues for water resources management, very closely linked across borders, but also with the whole topic of climate change. So how do we get climate change projections into this water resource management policies, but also how do we get that into investment planning and consider in the investment planning the impacts of climate change. So the idea is really to have a climate resilient and equitable and sustainable water management in Africa with this Team Europe initiative at a value of about 400 million, of which about 145 million is from the German government. A second initiative which has been launched also in March this year at the UN Water Conference is the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative, where we are combining the support from technical assistance and financial assistance to help utilities tackling more effectively the SDG 6 gap and the challenges with SDG 13. So really make them climate resilient in order to be able to deliver sustainable services, sanitation and water services to the people on the ground. And for this particular initiative, the pilot program actually has yesterday just been announced here at COP. So we will start beginning of next year with the implementation on the ground with 7 pre-selected utilities to really show what is possible if you start thinking innovatively, how you bring together technical assistance and financial assistance. Because what we all know in the water sector as well as in the climate sector, it's not necessarily a gap, a financing gap, that is not the funds are there quite often. The problem is that the investors, be it multilateral development banks, be it KfW, for example, as a German development bank, or other investors, they lack proper prepared project or utilities which are able actually to run the infrastructure and sustainably then basically also finance and maintain that infrastructure. So that's 2 points I wanted to mention. And the third point, this is really dear to my heart, maybe because I was heavily involved in developing that program on the Caribbean island of Grenada. And there we have started to work with the Green Climate Fund and the German Ministry of Environment on the G-Cruise project. And G-Cruise stands for Grenada Climate Resilient Water Sector Program. And I see that this program actually combines what you have mentioned, John, and also the other speakers have mentioned, the need to bring together the people in the water sector, thinking of the water sector, and the climate issues to make this water management resilient. And that includes in Grenada basically 3 components. One is dealing a lot with institutions. So we talk about regulation, and that includes also, I think some person has mentioned here, the question of rainwater harvesting, which has been then quite often on individual scale done, but the institutionalization, the integration into the systems is lacking. And so one of the points in that regulation part is actually the change of the building codes, so that actually for the building of new houses, you have to foresee the rainwater harvesting systems, which is able basically to store a sufficient amount of water to bridge the more and more extended dry periods. But also, and this is something which is actually the government is now working on, and I'm very happy that this is happening, is climate responsive tariffs, I would call it. So basically that the government or the water authority has the right in certain conditions of drought, for example, which of course are marked with clear indicators, to amend the water tariff to support and provide an incentive to reduce water consumption. So it is like a flexible water tariff dealing with what is actually the situation of water availability on the ground. And the second component, and this is also very important, because we are not only talking about the public sector and the water users in the households, we also talk about the large-scale users, and that on that Caribbean island, it's particular agriculture and tourism. So to allow these sectors to come up with innovative ideas and get them co-funded, so with a matching fund, a grant fund from the Grenada Development Bank, to implement, for example, highly efficient irrigation system, but also reduce the consumption of water and introduce reuse of water in the tourism sector in hotels, which you can imagine on a small island like that. Tourists are actually having a large impact when it comes to the water security. So, and the third part is then the large-scale infrastructure, which is needed to basically align with the changing rainfall patterns. So on the one hand, to have to increase the storage, but also on the other hand, to be able to come up with a system after a heavy or extreme rainfall event or even a hurricane, to come after much quickly, so that the water supply, which quite often has been after such an extreme event has been shut down for weeks or months even sometimes, that they can manage to have that much quickly again up and running. Because there again we see if this is not working in the aftermath of such a catastrophe, then all the health impacts and all this is basically multiplied. So basically these are just some examples where how we are working on that link between water and climate, and I'm very happy to be part of that panel, to be able to share these thoughts.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Maybe a very quick summary. When I was really struck, you and several of the other speakers both mentioned the need for water resources management in the climate space. It occurred to me that when you say water resources management, you're really talking about climate resilience management in effect. And that seems like a powerful a synergy that we really need to expand on in this space. If I could, I'd like to draft one of my colleagues, Georgette. Would you mind helping to maybe cart a microphone around if we have a couple of questions? Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you. Are there questions that any of you have for any of our panelists or case studies? We'd love, if you have stories of your own that you'd like to share. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yes, ma'am. If you could stand up and say who you are and where you're from.
My name is Dada Bakudo. I'm with the COP28 Presidency Food System Partnerships Program, and I'm also co-chair of the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture. I wanted to ask our young farmer, who's also from my country, how you've heard the policies being mentioned, right? And all the potential financial support. How do you feel as a young farmer in relation to these policies? Are they helpful to you, being mentioned in NDCs and NAPs? And I don't know if it's even practical for farmers, but how do you feel about these global and national level policies with your practical work on the ground?
Well, for me, I'm very hopeful. I'm very thankful for the financial help, but that's because I'm here. I know about it. How about those in the provinces, in the countryside? How will they know that there's financing available for them? And even when we're talking about financing, isn't it that only 0.3% of the climate fund is available for farmers? So how is that even fair when farmers are responsible for 1/3 of our food production? So we have to realign or review our priorities, because we can live without cars, we can live without a lot of other technologies, but we can't live without eating. We can't even live without water. So we have to really look at where we have to prioritize. I know farming isn't that of a high-paying business. It's not a very luxurious-looking business, but let's face it, it's an essential part of our life. So what I hope is for the leaders of everyone here at COP to really realign and review what we need to put at the forefront of our priorities. Because even when we have all these policies, when we don't actually have any timeline on the implementation and any direction that we can agree on, like what's been mentioned also before, that there's a lot of things that haven't been agreed on, but we can all agree that climate change is real, and any more global temperature increase and we're all doomed. So what is the value of all the money that we can accumulate, of all the global powers, if even our world is dead? So what's the next plan? Going to the moon? Planting crops on the moon? So that's not really a very viable.
Still going to need some water up there.
Yeah, we have to bring water there too. So we have to really make sure that the farmers that we bring here are not just for display. They're not just tools to make our policies more fragrant, more appealing. They actually should have a seat at the negotiating table, at the planning table, because we are the ones who are more affected, or one of the more affected, but we are also the ones who are one of the vital ones in our economies, all of our economies. Okay, that's it.
Very eloquent. Yes. Maheen.
Hi everybody, my name is Maheen Malik and I work for Alliance for Water Stewardship. This was a great panel, a lot of information and a lot of insight that I gained. I have a question from you, but I think what you're doing is amazing, and I see that you have a lot of potential. Now that you have this insight and you have this privilege, is there any sort of engagement that you think that when you go back, you would like to have this conversation with other farmers who are not particularly working on your land? But you, now that have that information, because of this privilege that you're here, do you want to pass on that information? Do you do that on a regular basis, considering you work much in a much more organized way? But do you have that interaction with other farmers who don't particularly work within your land?
Yes.
Short answer.
Sorry, I'll try. Okay, so basically, we also have farm laborers, and we also work with actual farmers, landowners. So through our bank, we also provide capacity training, because if we don't also help them improve their farming practices, they won't be able to increase their harvest or even have a decent harvest, and at the end won't be able to pay us back and won't be able to borrow again. So in my side as a sustainability advocate, I'm looking at ways to be able to adapt solar energy or renewable energy to be an alternative solution. For example, solar-powered water pumps for irrigation, in the sense of for fishing communities who are off-grid, we can provide solar-powered ice production facilities, so they don't have to keep on going back and to and fro to the mainland just for ice. So the technology is there, the knowledge is there, but the thing is, it's not really purposely directed to the people who need it the most.
Thank you. Oh, if it's an intervention, you can say it really, really quickly, but not a question. Okay.
This is Ranjan Bhatta from the Asia Foundation, Nepal. I have a question to the case presented for Bangladesh, BRAC team. Do you have, what is your experience in terms of, setting example and local governments, or any level of government taking it up for application and, best practices sharing and other things? Is there any example you have that municipality or any other local government is taking up the initiative that is supported by BRAC? And what is that look like?
Very brief, please.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much. Let me just give you two examples. One is the, that I was talking about, the solar-powered, submersible pump, which is a water supply options. They have already decided to scale up and, guide the other NGOs, the CVOs to implement this similar type of water options in the city corporation, Khulna City Corporation. And the other is livelihood programs. We have, a number of livelihood programs, which, I can give you just one example. BRAC has a very innovative ultra-poor graduation model, which is very well known and is being implemented in 50 countries. So it's a 2 years period, and they have a package of livelihood support program, and then they train them, they monitor them, they provide the cash grant, and they monitor for 18 months and then check in 24 months. So at the end of the 24 months, they become, the vulnerable. Just I finish it in a few seconds. Vulnerable level to resilient level. This is being, promoted, scaled up by many other organizations, not only Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could give our panelists and case study speakers a rousing hand. We're also grateful for our technical staff who supported the whole process, and to the UNFCCC for organizing this side event. And I wish you all safe journeys home. This has been, I think, for Adaptation, more generally, a very important COP, a really transformative COP. And I hope that this session has helped move that process along. Thank you.